For 3 years, my 11-year-old daughter, Maisie, had lived in a wheelchair without speaking a single clear word. Not to doctors, not to therapists, not even to me. Then, one afternoon at her rehabilitation center, she watched a janitor kneel beside a frightened child, wait for permission before touching him, and whispered, "He's different." The room froze. 20 minutes later, that same man noticed a tiny movement in Maisie's foot that 11 specialists had never been able to prove was intentional. But when she responded to a rhythm only he seemed to understand, I realized he had not simply noticed something in her body. Somehow, my daughter was responding to him. Before I tell you what happened next, I hope you're doing well today. Stay with us to the end, and please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the rest of Maisie's story. A few minutes before Maisie spoke, I had been answering for her. We were in the pediatric rehabilitation lounge, waiting for Dr. Nina Patel to finish with another family. I had been Maisie's only legal parent for years, and I had grown used to making every practical decision. Her communication tablet was mounted beside her chair, its screen divided into simple choices. I held up her water bottle and asked whether she wanted apple juice or water. Her eyes moved toward the water icon, but not quickly enough for me. "Water," I said, tapping it for her. "You always want water after therapy." Maisie looked at me. I knew the small tightening near her left eye meant irritation. After 3 years studying every blink and breath, I told myself I was fluent in her silence. "I know," I said softly. "You're tired." Her gaze stayed on me for another second before moving away. Across the room, a boy named Caleb sat in a molded wheelchair near a low shelf of puzzles. He was younger than Maisie, perhaps 6, and used a large red switch attached to the side of his chair to call for help. When his elbow knocked it to the floor, the switch slid beneath a rolling cart. A therapy aide hurried over. "I've got you, buddy." Caleb stiffened as she reached under his arms. His feet kicked against the supports, and she tightened her grip. "That's making him scared," I murmured. Maisie's eyes were already fixed on him. Before I could call out, the janitor pushed his supply cart around the corner. I had seen him twice that week, always at the edge of the room, emptying bins or wiping handrails. He had gray at his temples and a name patch that read Ray. I knew nothing else about him. He stopped when he saw Caleb struggling. The aide glanced over. "His switch rolled under there. I just need to lift him for a second." Ray set his mop handle against the wall. He did not reach for the boy. Instead, he lowered himself until his face was level with Caleb's. "Can I move the cart?" he asked. Caleb's breathing stayed fast. Ray waited. The aide shifted impatiently. "He can't answer you." Ray did not look away from Caleb. "Then I'll give him time." Ray rested 2 fingers against the metal frame of his cart and tapped twice. Then he paused and tapped once more, longer than the first 2. Tap, tap, silence, tap. Caleb's eyes moved toward the cart. "You want me to move it?" Ray asked. After several seconds, Caleb looked toward the fallen switch. Ray nodded as if the boy had spoken aloud. He rolled the cart aside, picked up the red switch, and placed it where Caleb could see it. "Can I put it back?" Caleb blinked once. Only then did Ray attach the switch to the chair. The aide stepped back, embarrassed. Ray did not correct her or make a show of being right. He simply tested the switch, waited for Caleb to press it, and returned to his cart. That was when Maisie spoke. "He's different." The words were faint and rough, more breath than voice, but they were words. Her words. For 1 second, I could not understand what I had heard. Then the water bottle slipped from my hand. "Maisie?" Her eyes widened. "Say it again, sweetheart." I moved closer so fast that my knee hit the footplate of her chair. "Please, just say it again." Her shoulders pulled inward. Her jaw tightened. The sound was gone. "Maisie, look at me. You said he's different. Can you say different?" Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway. "Laura, stop." I heard her. My voice cracked. "Nina, she spoke. She said an entire sentence. I believe you. Give her room. I tried, but 3 years of waiting had collapsed into that moment. I wanted another word, something solid enough to prove I had not imagined the sound. Nina dimmed the tablet and checked Maisie's breathing while I sat on my hands. For the next 20 minutes, no one asked her to speak again. Ray returned to wiping the far handrail, but he kept glancing toward her without approaching. The minute hand on the lounge clock had just completed its second-long sweep when his gaze dropped to her right foot. Her right foot, he said. I looked down. What about it? I thought I saw her big toe move. Maisie's legs rested inside padded supports. I had watched those feet through years of tests and stretching routines. I had seen spasms, reflexes, and movement that meant nothing. It does that sometimes, I said. The doctors called it random. Ray nodded. Maybe it was. He turned slightly toward Maisie. May I try something? I answered before she could. Yes. Ray looked at me then, not unkindly. I asked her. Heat rose into my face. Dr. Patel brought Maisie's tablet closer and opened the yes and no screen. Maisie, Ray wants to make a sound on the card again. Do you want him to try? Maisie stared at the screen. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Every part of me wanted to tap yes for her. At last, her gaze settled on the green square. Dr. Patel activated it. Yes, the tablet said. Ray placed 2 fingers on the metal frame. Tap, tap, a pause. Tap. We waited. Nothing happened at first. Then, after several long seconds, Maisie's right big toe moved inside her sock. It was tiny, barely more than a tremor. I caught my breath. Do it again. Ray did not. Instead, he changed the pattern. 1 tap, a pause, then 2 quick taps. We waited longer this time. Maisie's toe remained still. Again, I said. Use the first one again. Dr. Patel raised one hand. Laura, but she did it. We need to know what she is responding to. Ray returned to the original rhythm. Tap, tap. Silence. Tap. Maisie's breathing changed. Her lips parted. After the same long delay, her toe moved again. I gripped the back of her chair. Maisie, move it for me. Move your toe for Mommy. The toe stayed still. I tried again, louder. Come on, sweetheart. You can do it. Maisie's eyes shifted away from me. Ray stepped back from the cart. Why did you stop? I asked. She answered once. She needs to do it again so Dr. Patel can see. Dr. Patel was already watching Maisie's face. She is tired. We have waited 3 years. The words came out sharper than I intended. Maisie flinched, and shame followed immediately. Ray's voice remained quiet. Ask her first. Dr. Patel positioned the tablet where Maisie could see it. Do you want to try one more time? Maisie looked at the green square, then at the red one. Her eyes hovered between them so long that my chest began to ache. Finally, she chose no. No one tapped the card again. Dr. Patel asked Ray what he had noticed, and he described only what he could see. The movement followed one pattern after a delay. It had not followed the second pattern. He did not call it a diagnosis, or claim he knew what it meant. You waited longer than most people would, Dr. Patel said. Where did you learn to do that? Ray picked up his mop handle. Some answers take longer, he said. It was not an answer, and Nina knew it. She glanced at him, then at Maisie, but she let him return to work. I stood beside my daughter, staring at the foot I had watched for 3 silent years. I wanted to call every specialist who had warned me not to mistake hope for evidence. But Maisie had said no, so I stayed quiet. The room settled. Caleb pressed his red switch across the lounge. A soft electronic chime answered him. Ray pushed his cart toward the hallway without looking back. No one tapped the metal frame. Still, after the same long interval, Maisie's right big toe moved again. Maisie's toe moved again after Ray had already stopped tapping. For one wild second, I thought that was all the proof anyone should need. I bent toward her foot, as if staring harder might make it happen again. Maisie, do that for me, I said. Move your toe again. Nothing happened. Sweetheart, you just did it. Try one more time. Her eyes shifted toward the window. Dr. Patel moved the communication screen between us. Laura, she already said no to another trial. I know, but this is different. She did it without him. That does not mean she agreed to keep going. The word agreed struck me harder than it should have. For 3 years, doctors had stretched Maisie's legs, tested reflexes, flashed lights into her eyes, and asked her to perform movements her body never delivered. I had signed every form because I was her mother. I had never thought of every small test as something she might accept or refuse separately. Ray stood beside his cart with both hands on the handle. He did not look pleased with himself. If anything, he looked as though he wished he had never spoken. Dr. Patel crouched near Maisie. We are done for now. I want to look at this carefully, but not while you are exhausted. I wanted to argue. Then I saw the tremble in Maisie's lower lip and forced myself to nod. Ray started toward the hall. Wait, I said. What did you see? A movement after the last part of the rhythm, he said. That's all? I asked. That's all I know. You changed the pattern. I wanted to know whether she was responding to the sound, or whether the movement happened anyway. 11 specialists had evaluated Maisie over 3 years, including neurologists, rehabilitation doctors, physical therapists, and speech therapists. A janitor could not have walked into the room and found something they had all missed. Dr. Patel must have seen the thought on my face. He has not found a diagnosis, she said. He noticed a pattern. Those are not the same thing. Then test it. We will. Tomorrow morning, when she has rested. Tomorrow felt cruelly far away. At home, I positioned Maisie beside the kitchen table and warmed tomato soup she barely touched. I asked whether she wanted crackers. Before she could select an answer, I caught myself. The pause felt unnatural. Maisie looked from the cracker icon to me. I kept my hands in my lap. Finally, the device said, no. I nodded. All right. It should not have felt like an achievement to let my own child refuse crackers, but it did. I hated what that realization said about me. After dinner, I helped her change and settled her into bed without testing the foot again. Hope had already entered the room, however, and every small sound woke me. Each time, I looked toward the blanket covering her feet. By morning, I had imagined 3 futures. In one, the movement had been a reflex. In another, Maisie had always been able to move, but no one had waited long enough. In the third, one toe became the first step toward everything we had lost. Dr. Patel stopped all 3 fantasies before the evaluation began. This test answers one question, she told me. Can Maisie produce a repeatable response under controlled conditions? It does not tell us what recovery will look like. Spontaneous speech can appear when requested speech cannot. One sentence yesterday does not mean she can repeat it today. A physical therapist named Elena joined us, along with a technician who attached small sensors over the muscles connected to Maisie's right foot. Dr. Patel explained each step through Maisie's communication screen. No one touched her, until she selected yes. Ray stood near the wall in clean work clothes, without his cart. He looked more uncomfortable there than he ever had behind a mop handle. Dr. Patel faced him. You will make the sound. Nothing else. No coaching, no touching, and no changing the timing unless I tell you. Ray nodded. She turned to me. Only one person speaks during each attempt. If Maisie says stop, we stop. I nodded. I understand. Maisie looked at me long enough to make me wonder whether she believed me. Dr. Patel asked whether she wanted to begin. She chose yes. The room became so quiet that I could hear the air vent. Ray placed 2 fingers against a metal rail Elena had brought in. Tap, tap, a pause, tap. I stared at Maisie's foot. 5 seconds passed, then 10. At 13 seconds, the line on the monitor changed, and her big toe drew slightly inward. "There," I whispered. Dr. Patel lifted one finger without looking at me. For the next attempt, Ray tapped once, paused, then tapped twice quickly. We waited the same amount of time. Nothing happened. They repeated the first pattern. Maisie's toe moved again after nearly the same delay. Then they played no sound at all. No movement. The technician adjusted the screen. Elena checked Maisie's leg position to make sure pressure from the support was not triggering the response. They tried the target rhythm again. The signal returned. My hands began to shake. "She's doing it!" Dr. Patel completed another control attempt, then asked Maisie whether she wanted one final trial. She agreed. Ray tapped the original pattern. Her toe moved. This time, the monitor showed the muscle activity a fraction before I could see it. Dr. Patel finally sat back. "This appears to be a voluntary response." The sentence entered me slowly. Voluntary meant Maisie had chosen it. Voluntary meant the motion belonged to her. I pressed both hands over my mouth. Maisie watched me, wary rather than joyful. I moved toward her. "You did it." Dr. Patel touched my arm before I reached the chair. "Let her breathe." I stopped. The old version of me would have asked Maisie to do it again. She would have asked whether this meant walking, whether new therapy could start immediately, whether the last 3 years had been built on a mistake. I still wanted to ask all of it. Instead, I stood where Maisie could see me and said, "I saw you." Her shoulders loosened. Dr. Patel removed the sensors while Elena recorded the conditions. The room had been quiet. Only one person had given the cue. Maisie had been allowed a longer response window. The movement appeared after the target pattern, and not after the controls. "What does this mean?" I asked. "It means we have a reliable signal worth studying," Dr. Patel said. "Could it mean more movement?" I asked. "Possibly," Dr. Patel said. "Could she stand? Could she walk?" Maisie's eyes dropped. Dr. Patel waited until I noticed. "We are not going to turn one confirmed response into a promise her body may not be able to keep," she said. "Our first goal is communication. If she can use this consistently, she gains another way to say yes, no, stop, or choose." I looked at the foot that had answered us and felt ashamed that my first thought had been how far it might carry her instead of what she might choose to say with it. "But why now?" I asked. "Why did no one find this before?" "There were small contractions in some earlier notes," Dr. Patel said. "They could not be repeated when requested, and they did not appear consistently during short examinations. That does not mean 11 people watched this exact pattern and ignored it. Different specialists saw pieces at different times, without a reliable way to call the response voluntary." Ray spoke from the wall. "She may need the room to stop before she can start." Dr. Patel looked at him. "That may be part of it." I thought about every room we had filled around Maisie. Every encouraging voice, every command, every person watching the clock. I had called that support. Maybe to her, it had only been noise. Dr. Patel asked Maisie whether Ray's presence had helped. Her answer was yes. Then she asked whether Maisie wanted him included in another short session, while the team worked on making the signal reliable. Ray straightened. "I'm not a therapist." "No one is asking you to be," Dr. Patel said. "You would provide the familiar cue. We would handle everything else." He looked at Maisie, not at me. The screen displayed several words. Maisie moved slowly through them. It took nearly a minute. I did not reach for the tablet. When the device finally spoke, its mechanical voice filled the quiet room. "Ray stays." Hope rose in me again, but this time it came with something sharper. For 3 years, I had believed the space between Maisie and the rest of the world belonged to the two of us. Now, my daughter had opened it for someone else. By the end of that week, Ray had become part of Maisie's short assessment sessions, though Dr. Patel reminded all of us that he was not there to treat her. He stood near the wall, tapped the agreed rhythm when asked, and left every decision to Nina and Elena. His job was only to provide something familiar. Mine, I was beginning to learn, was not to turn every response into a test of how much more my daughter could do. I was not learning quickly enough. On Thursday morning, Elena placed a small metal plate on a padded table beside Maisie's chair. The plate gave Ray a consistent surface for the rhythm, while Maisie's communication tablet remained positioned at eye level. Nina had added 2 simple commands to the screen. One meant again, the other meant stop. Today is not about how many times she succeeds, Nina told me. We want to know whether she can choose when the cue begins and when it ends. I nodded, but I had already written the number 4 at the top of a page in my notebook. The day before, Maisie had responded correctly 4 times. I wanted 5. Ray noticed the notebook when he entered. His eyes rested on the number, then moved back to Maisie without comment. Elena asked Maisie whether she wanted to begin. She agreed. Ray tapped twice, waited, then tapped once more. After 13 seconds, her right toe moved. I marked a line beneath the number 4. The second attempt worked too. On the third, Maisie did not respond. I leaned closer, watching her foot as if attention could pull the movement from her. "Come on, sweetheart," I whispered. "You know this one." Her eyes moved toward me instead of the tablet. Ray lowered his hand. "Why did you stop?" I asked. She looked away. "She looks away all the time." "Then, let her tell us what it means." Nina shifted the tablet slightly. Maisie studied the 2 commands, then selected stop. The disappointment hit before I could hide it. "Trip-tet-it." Elena removed the plate. "We can work on another skill." Maisie's eyes flicked toward Ray's hand, then back to the screen. She selected again. I smiled too quickly. "See? She just needed a break." Ray did not raise his fingers. "Ask her what she wants," repeated. Nina opened a page of choices. Rhythm, toe, game, rest. Maisie selected game. Ray glanced around the room. "I don't know any games." Her eyes narrowed in a way I recognized as disbelief. "You heard her," I said. "You're going to have to learn." Elena found 3 hollow plastic blocks and placed them upside down beside the metal plate. Each made a different sound when tapped. Ray tested them one by one. The first gave a dull knock. The second clicked. The third rattled because a tiny bead had been left inside. Maisie chose the rattling block. Ray tapped the familiar pattern on it, then tapped a second pattern on the metal plate. Nina asked Maisie to choose which sound she wanted repeated. Maisie selected the metal plate. They continued slowly. Sometimes Ray followed her choice. Sometimes he deliberately tapped the wrong surface and waited. The first time he did it, I corrected him. "She chose the plate." Ray nodded. "I know. Then why did you use the block?" He looked at Maisie. "I wanted to know if she would correct me." Maisie's toe moved after the cue they had agreed would mean no. Ray immediately nodded. "I got it wrong." The corners of her mouth lifted. I had seen that expression before the accident, usually when she had hidden one of my shoes or switched the labels on the spice jars. Afterward, every therapist had praised her patience, her courage, her cooperation. No one had called her mischievous, because none of us had left enough room for mischief. Ray tapped the wrong surface again. Maisie gave no signal. He waited, then tried the correct one. Still nothing. We had only 3 confirmed responses, 1 fewer than the previous day. "Maybe she's tired." Maisie looked at me sharply. Ray rested both hands in his lap and let the room remain quiet. 20 seconds passed, then 30. My shoulders tightened with each one. Ray did not tap. At 40 seconds, Maisie's toe moved without any cue from him. Nina leaned forward. That was initiated by her. Elena confirmed the timing on her tablet. No preceding sound. No change in leg position. A warmth spread through my chest. I started to ask for another, saw Ray glance at the notebook and closed it instead. Another long pause followed. Maisie moved her toe once, waited, then moved it again. The timing was uneven, but the choice was hers. Nina opened the communication screen. "Did you want Ray to make a sound?" The green choice lit. Ray pointed to himself, then to the 3 surfaces. "You choose." She selected the rattling block. He tapped it once. Her eyes shifted toward the metal plate. "You changed your mind?" I asked. Maisie looked back at me, and I felt the answer before the device gave it. "No." Ray studied the objects. "You want me to figure it out?" She selected yes. He tapped the rattling block twice. No response. He tried the dull block once. Nothing. Then he tapped the metal plate with the familiar pattern. "Maisie's too moved." Ray smiled. "You made me guess." The soft sound that came from her was not a word, only breath pushed through a half-formed laugh. It was enough to make Elena grin. Even Nina looked down for a moment, as if she needed to collect herself. I laughed too, but something inside me tightened. For 3 years, I had believed I knew every expression Maisie could make. In less than a week, Ray had become part of a joke I had not understood until it was over. The feeling shamed me. He had given my daughter nothing except time, and I resented him for receiving something she had not given me. A metal tray crashed in the hallway. The sound split the room. Maisie's body jerked against the supports. Her shoulders rose, her jaw locked, and her breathing turned shallow and fast. I reached for her. "Maisie, it's all right." Her eyes moved past me. Ray had gone still too. For a moment, the color seemed to leave his face. Then he set the blocks down and stayed where he was. He did not touch her. He placed 2 fingers on the metal plate. Tap, tap, a pause. Tap. Maisie's breathing remained ragged. Ray waited without repeating the sound. Her eyes found him. Nina lowered the lights near the window. Elena moved the tray farther down the hall and closed the door. I kept my hands off Maisie's chair, though every instinct told me to hold her. Ray tapped the pattern once more. This time, Maisie's shoulders began to lower. Her next breath was deeper. Then another. I watched the change happen in front of me, not because Ray had commanded her to calm down, but because he had given her something predictable inside the noise. When Maisie's breathing steadied, Nina asked whether she wanted anyone to touch her. Her answer was no. I swallowed and stepped back. Ray removed his hand from the plate. "How did you know that would help?" I asked. He rubbed his fingers against his palm. "I watched what helped." "That isn't an answer. It's the one I have." Nina glanced between us. "A reaction isn't a story yet. We record what happened, not what we think it means." Ray's gaze dropped at the word story, but he said nothing. Maisie looked at the metal plate. Slowly, she lifted one finger against the padded armrest. The movement was clumsy and barely audible, but the pattern was unmistakable. 2 small taps. A pause. 1 longer press. She had started it herself. Nina opened the word screen. "Do you want to tell us something?" Maisie began searching through the choices. The process took so long that my mind rushed ahead of her. Sound. Scared. Stop. Ray. I forced myself not to suggest any of them. At last, she fixed her eyes on 4 letters. The device spoke in its calm, mechanical voice. Dark. No one moved. Ray's hand slipped from the edge of the table. He caught it before it struck the floor, but not before I saw his face change. He looked at Maisie, as if the word belonged to a place neither Nina nor I could see. The word dark stayed in the room, long after the device stopped speaking. I wanted to ask Maisie what she meant. I wanted to know whether she remembered a room, a road, or the inside of the crushed van. Most of all, I wanted to know why Ray had looked as if the word had struck him. Dr. Patel did not give me the chance. "No questions about the accident during therapy," she said. "Not from you, not from Ray, and not from anyone else." I only want to understand what she is trying to tell us. Then we wait until she chooses to tell us. Maisie kept her eyes on the tablet. I nodded, but the word followed me home. That night I wrote it at the top of a fresh page in my notebook. Underneath, I listed every successful toe movement, every sound Maisie had made, and how long she had tolerated each session. By the end of the week, the page looked less like a mother's journal and more like a scoreboard. The next Monday, Elena brought Maisie into the standing room. My daughter had used a standing frame for years. It helped with circulation, bone health, and stretching, but the machine had always done most of the work. She had never shifted her weight forward on purpose, and she had never taken a step across the floor. That morning, Elena fitted padded supports around Maisie's knees and waist, while another therapist checked the harness above her. Ray stood near the door, far enough away not to interfere. Dr. Patel positioned the tablet in front of Maisie. "We are going to help you stand. Then Elena will ask whether you want to shift your weight. You can stop at any time." She agreed. The frame raised her slowly. Her legs straightened beneath her, and her shoes settled against the platform. I had seen her upright hundreds of times, but now I watched her right foot as if it held a secret. "You're doing beautifully," I said. Her eyes moved toward me. I corrected myself. "You're standing." Elena placed one hand near Maisie's hip without pushing. "I want you to think about moving a little more weight toward your right side." Ray did not tap. This was not his test. For several seconds, nothing changed. Then a muscle tightened above Maisie's knee. Her body tilted so slightly, I might have missed it before that week. Elena smiled. I felt that. I opened my notebook and wrote one shift. The next attempt was smaller. The third did not come at all. I heard myself begin counting the seconds. At 20, Maisie's breathing changed. "Just a little more," I said. "You did it once." Her eyes went to the stop icon. Elena lowered her hands immediately. "Are you hurting?" "Yes," appeared on the screen. I looked at the clock. We had been standing less than 4 minutes. "Is it the brace? Maybe if we adjust it, she can try again." Dr. Patel moved between me and the frame. "No, but this is the first time she has shifted her weight." And she told us it hurt. The harness lowered Maisie into her chair. Disappointment rose in me so quickly that I hated myself for feeling it. Dr. Patel waited until Maisie was settled. "Today's success is that she told us when it hurt." I closed the notebook. Ray had not said a word, but I saw him looking at the page in my lap. I slid it into my bag. We moved to a quieter consultation room, so Maisie could rest. A woman from the center's community outreach office was waiting with a folder. Her name was Beth, and she spoke gently, but the folder made the conversation feel official before it began. She explained that the center held an annual community mobility and accessibility showcase. This year, the event would also include a short remembrance for the people affected by the highway accident 3 years earlier. Nearly 400 guests had registered, including families, therapists, first responders, road workers, and community volunteers. When Beth mentioned the state road maintenance crews, Ray's hand stopped halfway to the paper cup beside him. The pause lasted only a moment. He picked up the cup and took a drink, but he did not look toward me. "We would like Laura to speak for a few minutes about caregiving," Beth said. "That invitation was arranged before this week. Nothing about Maisie's new response would be shared unless both of you agreed." "I can talk about staying beside her from the first night onward," I said. I never left. Ray's paper cup stopped near his mouth. I noticed the pause but mistook it for discomfort with the event. Beth looked toward Maisie. "The invitation still belongs to both of you." Beth turned the folder toward me. The consent form limited what the center could say about Maisie's medical history, barred questions about the accident, and restricted recording during the children's presentations. "She can withdraw at any point," Beth added, "even after you sign." I read every page before adding my name. My signature allowed the center to ask. It did not answer for Maisie. I looked at her. You don't have to be part of this. Her gaze moved to the event photograph on the folder. It showed a wide stage, with a ramp and open floor space. Dr. Patel opened a page of choices. Watch, attend, participate. No. Maisie selected, participate. Hope flared before I could contain it. Maybe she could demonstrate the signal. Ray shifted near the wall. Beth said, only if she wants to. What about standing? I asked. If she keeps progressing, she might be able to stand for a few seconds. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. We are not promising a performance. I didn't say performance. A goal might motivate her. Maisie made a sound deep in her throat. Every face turned toward her, and she immediately looked down. I hated that even our attention could become pressure. Dr. Patel moved the tablet closer. Do you want to choose a goal for the event? Maisie fixed her gaze on yes. The next page offered several options. Sit on stage. Use the new signal. Stand with support. Choose something else. She selected something else. It took almost 2 minutes for her to build the sentence. I kept my hands beneath the table so I would not reach toward the screen. The mechanical voice finally said, "Walk to Mom." The room seemed to narrow around those 3 words. I had imagined Maisie walking in 1,000 impossible ways, across our kitchen, through the library where I worked, into a school auditorium. In every version, I ran toward her before she reached me. This time, I did not move. Dr. Patel spoke first. We can explore whether supported forward stepping is a safe goal. Exploring is not promising. Before any public attempt, you would practice weight shifts and individual foot placements in private. The event would be the first time you linked those movements toward a person you chose, not the first time your legs were asked to move. She agreed. Beth asked whether she wanted the goal mentioned in the event program. Her answer was no. Ray finally stepped away from the wall. Who chooses the distance? Beth glanced at him, surprised. Maisie does, Dr. Patel said. Who is allowed to touch her? Elena or the physical therapist assigned to support her? What tells everyone to stop? Dr. Patel turned the tablet toward Maisie so the choice belonged to her. Ray looked at me. A room like that will always want one more step. My excitement cooled. He continued. You don't owe a room a second step. He had spoken to Maisie, but the warning felt meant for me. Maisie looked at Ray's hands. He had rested them on the back of an empty chair, his fingers still. Dr. Patel opened the word screen. Maisie searched slowly, passing over stop, touch, and Ray. Then she selected one word. Hand. Ray's fingers tightened around the chair. I looked from his hand to Maisie's face. Do you mean you want him to hold your hand? Maisie turned her eyes away from the tablet. The movement was small, but it closed the conversation more completely than any spoken refusal. Ray heard my question from 3 feet away. He could have stepped in. He could have told me whether the word meant anything to him. Instead, he lowered his hands and walked quietly into the hall. Ray did not return to the consultation room after I asked whether Maisie wanted him to hold her hand. Dr. Patel waited until the door closed behind him. Then she turned the communication tablet back toward Maisie. Do you want to continue talking? Maisie looked at the red no icon. The device answered for her. I felt the refusal settle between us. I was only trying to help her explain. You gave her an explanation, Nina said. I asked a question. You gave her a person, an action, and a meaning. She had offered one word. I looked at Maisie. Her face had gone still in the way I used to mistake for calm. Now I wondered how often it had meant she was retreating somewhere I could not follow. She said dark, then hand. I said. What was I supposed to think? You can think anything you want. You cannot place that thought inside her answer. The words made me defensive. I am her mother. I have spent 3 years learning what every movement means. Nina did not raise her voice. Knowing her body is not the same as owning her memory. Maisie's gaze lifted toward Nina. That hurt because I had spent 3 years treating intimate knowledge of Maisie's body as proof that no part of her could be closed to me. Yet after Nina challenged me, my daughter looked toward her instead. Nina ended the session. She asked Elena to return Maisie's chair to a comfortable position and told me there would be no more questions about the accident during therapy. What if she brings it up? I asked. Then we let her choose the words. What if she cannot find all of them? We do not find them for her. On the drive home, I apologized once. Maisie kept her eyes on the window. Every explanation forming in my mind began with what I needed her to understand, so I let the rest of the drive remain quiet. The next morning, Maisie refused the rhythm game. Ray stood in his usual place near the wall, but he did not bring the metal plate forward. Nina asked Maisie whether she wanted him in the room. She selected yes. When Nina asked whether she wanted him to tap, she selected. Ray accepted the answer without reaction. He pulled a chair near the door and sat with his hands folded. I could feel his distance as clearly as if he had accused me aloud. Elena worked with Maisie on the toe signal, using visual choices instead of sound. A green card meant yes, a blue card meant no. Maisie responded twice, then stopped. I watched her eyes move toward the word screen. Do you want to say something? Nina asked. Her eyes held on yes, until Nina activated it. No one spoke after that. The first word took nearly a minute. Dark. The mechanical voice sounded louder than it had the day before. Maisie returned to the word screen. Her eyes moved slowly through the categories until she found the second word, hand. My pulse quickened, but I kept my mouth closed. She searched again. Ray's fingers tightened together in his lap. Nina noticed, but she did not look away from Maisie. The third word appeared. Stayed. Dark. Hand. Stayed. The 3 words did not form a complete sentence, but they carried weight. They felt chosen rather than discovered. Ray stood so quickly that the chair legs scraped the floor. The sound made Maisie flinch, and he immediately froze. I'm sorry, he said. His face had lost its color. I looked at him. You know what she means. I know those words affected me. That is not what I asked. Nina moved between us without blocking my view of Maisie. Laura, not here. He reacted before any of us did. Ray looked toward the door. Please don't leave, I said. Not again. Maisie's eyes moved to him. He sat back down. Nina asked Maisie whether she wanted the conversation to continue while she was present. Maisie selected yes, but when Nina offered accident, Ray, or other, she chose other. It was a boundary, not an invitation. Nina turned to Ray. You may answer questions about yourself. Do not interpret Maisie's words. He nodded. Nina added. After Maisie chose the word dark, Ray told me privately that he might have been part of the highway crew at her accident. He was not certain, and I did not allow that possibility to be placed in front of her as a memory. You knew? I asked. I knew he had a concern, not that he had identified Maisie. I tried to keep my voice even. Have you ever seen my daughter before you started working here? Ray looked at Maisie, then back at me. I wasn't sure at first. I started working at this center 8 weeks ago and was transferred to the pediatric wing only 2 weeks before we met. I had no idea she was here. My chest tightened. At first, I used to work road maintenance for the state. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What does that have to do with Maisie? My crew was working near the highway accident 3 years ago. Elena stopped writing. I heard the phrase highway accident, but my mind resisted letting it attach to him. Ray belonged to polished floors, gray work shirts, and the faint, clean smell of disinfectant. He did not belong to twisted metal, shattered glass, and the night that divided our lives into before and after. You were there? I asked. I was in the area. That is not the same thing, I said. No, Ray replied. Did you see the van? I asked. Yes, he said. Did you see Maisie? His jaw tightened. Nina reminded him. Only what belongs to your actions. Ray nodded again. I was at the scene before everything was cleared. What did you do? I called for help. I waited. And then, he looked down at his hands. I stayed in the area until emergency crews took over. The answer was shaped too carefully. It gave me facts while keeping the center empty. Were you near her? I am not going to tell Maisie what she remembers. I am asking what you remember. And I can tell you what I did. I cannot tell her what she remembers. You suspected for days that you might have seen my daughter. And you told Nina instead of me. I told the doctor because I did not want my uncertainty placed in front of Maisie. I knew I had seen a child in a damaged vehicle. I never learned her name. And I could not identify an 11-year-old from the face I had seen in the dark. You heard me call her Maisie, after I had already noticed the movement. That should have been enough, I said. It wasn't, Ray replied. Anger rose through the fear. You came into her sessions. You let her respond to you. You watched me try to understand what was happening while you kept this to yourself. Ray absorbed every word, without stepping back. I did not want to give her a memory, he said. You think I would do that? His silence answered too quickly. I turned toward Nina. You agree with him? I agree that memory must be handled carefully, especially when a child has a brain injury and limited ways to correct the adults around her. I looked at Maisie. She was watching me. I was beside her that night, I said. I held her hand. I never left. The sentence sounded practiced because it was. For 3 years I had repeated it whenever the accident returned in nightmares or therapy. Then I tried to see the memory instead of the words. I remembered gripping her hand before the impact. I remembered the scream of tires and the violent pull of the seatbelt. After that came darkness. Then an ambulance ceiling. I had always stitched those memories together, as if no time existed between them. How long was I unconscious? I asked. Nina's expression softened. That is not a question we can answer in this room. I tried to remember the first moment I saw Maisie after the crash. Not inside the van, not on the road. At the hospital. There were hours I had spoken about as though I had lived them beside her, but I could not see a single image from them. I looked at Ray. Did she know you? His eyes moved briefly toward the tablet. I don't know what she recognized. Maisie did not correct him. She did not confirm him. She kept her 3 words on the screen and refused to give us a 4th. For the first time, I understood that the darkest space in her story might not belong to her alone. Part of that night was missing from mine. The gap in my memory no longer felt like an empty space. It felt like a place where I had installed a story and lived inside it for 3 years. The next morning, Dr. Patel placed 2 empty notebooks on the table between us. One had a blue cover, the other was gray. The blue one is for things confirmed outside Maisie's memory, she said. Dates, locations, what another person says they did. The gray one is only for information Maisie starts herself. I touched the gray cover. What if the information in one explains something in the other? You still keep them separate. That feels artificial. It is supposed to. It forces the adults to notice when we are completing her story for her. Maisie sat beside me with her tablet positioned near her right hand. She watched as I labeled the blue notebook confirmed and the gray one Maisie chose to say. The second notebook stayed empty. I wanted to copy dark, hand, stayed into it, but Nina stopped me. Those words belong there only if Maisie wants them recorded. Nina asked her. Maisie refused. I put down the pen. That afternoon, I asked Ray if he would meet me at the roadside memorial near the accident site. I told him Nina's rule before he answered. I would ask only about his actions. I would not ask him to interpret Maisie's words. He studied me for a long time. And if my answer is not enough, then I will have to live with that. I did not know if I meant it, but he agreed. The memorial stood beyond a guardrail, where the highway curved around a low embankment. 3 years had faded the ribbons tied to the fence. Fresh artificial flowers had been placed beneath a small metal marker for the passengers who had died. Traffic passed behind us in heavy bursts. Each truck pushed hot air against my clothes. Ray stood several feet away from the marker, He wore the same gray work shirt he wore at the center, but without the cleaning cart he seemed less certain of where to put his hands. I opened the blue notebook. What did you do? His eyes moved toward the highway. My crew was working less than a mile east. We heard the impact before we saw the smoke. I wrote it down. I ran toward the van. One of the men called dispatch. I used my radio too. What happened when you reached it? He glanced at me. I held up the notebook. Only what you did. I checked what I could reach. I called for help. I stayed in the area until emergency crews took over. The answer left the center untouched. Were you hurt? That is not important. It is part of what you did. He looked down at his left forearm, where the edge of an old scar disappeared beneath his sleeve. I was treated later. I wrote that too. The public crash summary I had received named only a state maintenance unit among the assisting crews. When I asked why his name was absent, Ray said individual crew actions had gone through the supervisor's radio log, not the family summary. At the time, I had been hospitalized and had never requested the full operational report. The questions crowded behind my teeth. Did you touch her? Was she alone? Did she call for me? Instead, I looked at the memorial and asked the only question that stayed inside the boundary. Why did you not tell anyone at the center that you were there? I did not know Maisie was the child I remembered. When did you begin to suspect? When she reacted to the rhythm. His answer was careful, but it was still more than he had given me before. Why that rhythm? He shook his head. That question crosses into what happened with her. It is still something you did. It is also something she may remember. I am not separating those for you today. Anger rose, then weakened before it reached my voice. He was following the rule I had agreed to. He was doing exactly what I had demanded from everyone around Maisie, and rarely demanded from myself. I closed the notebook. Thank you for coming. Ray looked surprised. That is all? That is where I am choosing to stop. He nodded once. The distinction followed me back to the center. At Maisie's next session, Elena worked with her on choosing between two sounds without using the old rhythm. Nina had reduced the number of people in the room. Ray stayed near the door, present but silent. Elena played a bell tone, then a soft drum beat. Which one should I play again? Maisie began moving through the choices on her screen. I folded my hands beneath my thigh and waited. 30 seconds passed. Then 40. Ray looked at the floor. Nina watched Maisie, not me. Finally, the tablet said, drum. Elena played the drum beat. Maisie's eyes widened in exaggerated disappointment. She had chosen the wrong icon. Do you want to change it? Elena asked. Maisie searched again. This time she selected a sentence from her social page. Your pictures are bad. Elena laughed. That is fair. A breathy sound escaped Maisie. It was not a word, but it carried the shape of laughter. I laughed with her. The joke had taken nearly a minute to arrive, and this time the room had remained open long enough to receive it. When the session ended, Maisie looked at me and selected one word. Finally, Ray turned his face away, but I saw him smile. 2 days later, the center held a walkthrough for the community showcase. Maisie stayed at home with the aide who supervised her remote schoolwork because the visit involved crowded hallways and long periods of standing. That allowed me to discuss logistics without making her listen to adults talk about her body. The main hall could hold 400 guests. A low ramp led to an open presentation area. Beth showed me the quiet room behind the stage, the accessible exit, and the location where Elena could check Maisie's equipment. A row of folding chairs had been reserved for former road workers and other people connected to the accident. A portable microphone stood near the aisle for the remembrance segment. This is Owen Brooks, Beth said when a broad-shouldered man with silver hair joined us. He is coordinating the road crew guests. Owen shook my hand with both of his. I was the maintenance supervisor on the radio that night. I kept the dispatch clock while my crew moved toward the crash. A few of us come every year. His voice softened when he looked toward the memorial program in Beth's folder. Not everyone came back to these things, he said. Some men left the department. Some just stopped answering calls. That night broke people who never got their names printed anywhere. Beth asked whether he still had contact information for former crew members. He said he had old numbers, but no guarantee they worked. Ray's name was not mentioned. He had been reassigned to another wing during the walkthrough. I told myself that was ordinary scheduling, but I remembered how carefully he had asked whether he could stand near the exit during the event. Beth reviewed the introduction she had prepared for me. One line said, "I had remained beside Maisie from the night of the accident, through every stage of recovery." My stomach tightened. That line needs to change. Beth looked up. "How would you like it phrased?" I glanced at Owen, who had moved away to count seats with another volunteer. "There is part of that night I don't remember." Beth's expression shifted, but she did not ask me to explain. She crossed out the sentence. "We can say you have cared for her throughout her recovery." I nodded. Yes. It was not a confession. Maisie was not there to hear it, and I had not yet told her the truth directly. Still, it was the first time I had stopped the false version from being repeated in public. When I returned to the center, Ray was waiting near the staff board. The event roster had been pinned beneath a map of the hall. He ran one finger down the list and stopped at Owen Brooks. "Do you know him?" I asked. Ray kept his eyes on the name. "He was my supervisor. Will he recognize you?" Ray did not answer immediately. Then he looked toward the marked exit on the floor plan. He knew me before that night changed everything. Once I knew Owen Brooks might recognize Ray at the showcase, waiting no longer felt responsible. It felt reckless. I told myself, I needed the truth so I could protect Maisie. If someone revealed Ray's connection to the accident in front of 400 people, I needed to know what they might say. I needed to prepare her, prepare the center, and prepare myself. Those reasons sounded careful and maternal. Beneath them was something less noble. I could not stand the thought that Ray and Owen might know a part of my daughter's life that I did not. Maisie's private rehearsals continued during the 5th week. Elena helped her practice shifting weight inside a supported walking system, while Nina monitored pain, fatigue, and ascent. The goal was not to cross a room. It was to discover whether Maisie could initiate a forward movement safely and stop when she chose. Ray stood near the door as he had promised. He did not touch the equipment or give instructions. When Maisie became overwhelmed by the machinery around her, he sometimes used the familiar rhythm after she agreed. Her progress was uneven but real. She could hold her weight toward her right side for several seconds. Once, with most of her weight supported, her left foot slid forward less than an inch. I felt the old excitement rise, but I did not write it in my notebook. I had carried the blue notebook in my bag all week without adding anything. There was no space on its pages for the question that mattered most. During the final attempt that afternoon, Maisie's breathing began to quicken. Elena loosened her support and asked whether she wanted to pause. Maisie looked toward Ray. He placed 2 fingers against the metal rail, but did not tap. "Do you want the rhythm?" Nina asked. She chose yes. Ray gave the familiar pattern. Maisie's shoulders lowered slightly, but her eyes remained fixed on him. "Take your time," Elena said. Ray watched Maisie struggle to settle her breathing. Then, so quietly that I almost missed it, he said, "One sound at a time." Maisie's head turned toward him. The movement was fast enough to pull the harness straps tight. Her eyes widened, and the muscles around her mouth stiffened. Ray stopped breathing for a second. I saw recognition pass between them, or believed I did. I could not tell which possibility frightened me more. Nina moved the tablet closer. "Do you want to stop?" Maisie selected no, but she did not look away from Ray. Elena continued the session carefully. Maisie shifted her weight once, then indicated that she wanted to sit. When the harness lowered her into the chair, Ray stepped into the hallway. I followed him. He was halfway to the service corridor when I caught up. Where did that sentence come from? Ray did not turn around. "Which sentence?" "You know which one." He stopped beside a row of windows overlooking the therapy garden. Through the glass, I could still see the doorway to the rehabilitation room. I was helping her focus, he said. You said it as if you had said it before. His face closed. That should have been my signal to stop. Nina had warned me. Maisie was only a few yards away. Yet the showcase was approaching, and Owen's name was still printed on the guest list. If Owen recognizes you, what is he going to tell everyone? That is a question for Owen. It becomes my question when it involves my daughter. It involved her before you knew my name. The answer landed like an accusation. You let me agree to that event without telling me what might happen. I told you someone could remember me. You did not tell me why. Ray looked toward the therapy room. Lower your voice. Then answer me. I cannot promise what another man will say. You can tell me what he knows. Ray rubbed his thumb across his fingers, the same fingers that created the rhythm. Maisie answered. What did you say to her that night? I asked. His eyes sharpened. Laura, was it that sentence? Did you tell her one sound at a time? He said nothing. The silence felt like confirmation. You have been standing in those sessions listening to her give us pieces while you already know what they mean. I know what I did. I do not know what she remembers. You keep repeating that as if it excuses everything. It is not an excuse. It is a boundary. A boundary you created without asking either of us. His jaw tightened. You want me to describe a terrified child inside a wrecked vehicle while she is close enough to hear me. You want the full story now because not knowing hurts you. I need to protect her. Then lower your voice, he said. She can hear you. The therapy room door remained open behind us. I could hear the soft sound of Elena adjusting Maisie's chair. I knew my daughter could hear us. I continued anyway. You do not get to decide what her mother is allowed to know. Ray finally faced me completely. His voice stayed low, which somehow made the words cut deeper. You told her you were there every minute because the truth hurt you. How is that different from filling in her silence? I could not answer. Movement behind him caught my eye. Maisie was in the doorway. Elena stood behind her chair, one hand resting on the push bar. Nina was beside the tablet. My daughter had heard everything. I stepped toward her. Maisie, I can explain. Her eyes moved away from me. Nina did not ask whether she had heard. She did not need to. We are ending for today, she said. Maisie looked toward the standing room. Nina followed her gaze. Do you want to continue the rehearsal? Maisie studied the yes and no choices. I waited for her to select yes. She had been working toward the showcase for weeks. She had chosen the goal herself. The device said, no. Nina nodded immediately. Then we are done. Maybe she only means the conversation, I said. Nina turned toward me. She answered the question I asked. Elena began removing the remaining support straps. Maisie's muscles still responded when Elena checked her position. Nothing had disappeared from her body. She simply refused to offer it to us. Ray stepped toward the service hall. I should not come back to these sessions. Maisie's eyes moved to him. He stopped. I have become a distraction, he said. She was progressing before this turned into something else. That is not your decision, Nina replied. Ray looked at Maisie. I am trying not to make it worse. I heard the contradiction before he did. He was about to disappear because he believed leaving was best, the same way I had demanded answers because I believed knowing was best. Neither of us had asked Maisie. Nina returned the tablet to the social page. Do you want Ray to leave the program? Maisie did not select yes or no. She searched through the words slowly. Ray waited near the doorway. I stood several feet away, afraid even my breathing might become pressure. The device finally spoke. Both stop. I looked at Ray. Maisie had not chosen between us. She had refused the fight itself. Nina canceled the next rehearsal and told Beth that Maisie's participation in the showcase was no longer confirmed. No one argued. The goal belonged to Maisie, which meant she could remove it. Ray left without saying goodbye. At home that evening, the two notebooks lay on the kitchen table. The blue one held facts about the highway, the road crew, and the part of the night I could not remember. The gray one was almost empty because Maisie had chosen to keep her words to herself. I opened the blue notebook and picked up my pen. There was nothing honest to write. The answer I wanted could not be taken through pressure, preparation, or careful questions. Every attempt to protect Maisie had brought me closer to repeating the very thing that wounded her. I moved beside her chair but did not touch it. "Tell me what you need me to do." Maisie looked at me for a long time. Then she moved through the choices, with deliberate care. The mechanical voice answered, "Nothing." For the first time, doing nothing was not neglect. It was the only choice she had left me. For the next 4 days, I did exactly what Maisie had asked. I did nothing. I did not mention the showcase. I did not ask whether she wanted Ray back in the room. I did not place the blue or gray notebook on the kitchen table. At the center, Elena worked with Maisie on ordinary stretching, pressure relief, and communication choices that had nothing to do with walking or the accident. The first day, doing nothing, felt like holding my breath. By the fourth, I began to understand that restraint was not the absence of care. It was care without a demand attached. "At home?" I asked, before adjusting Maisie's blanket. I waited while she chose dinner. When her eyes moved slowly across the screen, I stopped offering guesses. She noticed every time. She did not reward me with a smile or a word. That was part of the lesson, too. Respecting a boundary did not purchase forgiveness. On Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Patel asked whether Maisie wanted private time with me in the quiet consultation room. Maisie agreed. Nina positioned the tablet, reminded her that she could end the conversation at any point, and stepped outside. I sat across from my daughter rather than beside her. My hand stayed in my lap. "I need to tell you the truth about the accident," I said, "not ask you for yours." Maisie watched me. "I remember holding your hand before the crash. I remember waking in an ambulance. I do not remember what happened between those moments. I was unconscious for part of that night." My throat tightened, but I did not look away. "For 3 years, I told you I stayed beside you every minute. I said it because I was ashamed that I could not remember. I needed the story to make me feel like I had not failed you." Maisie's eyes dropped to the tablet, then returned to me. "That story helped me," I continued. "I do not know if it helped you. I should never have filled the missing part with something I wanted to be true. I wanted to tell her I had never meant to lie. I wanted to describe waking with blood in my mouth and screaming her name until a paramedic held my shoulders down. Each detail might have been true, but each would have asked her to comfort me. So, I stopped. "I am sorry." The silence stretched between us. I did not ask whether Ray had held her hand. I did not ask whether she had been afraid, or whether she had believed I left her. I did not ask if she forgave me. After nearly a minute, Maisie selected one word: leave. Pain moved through me, clean and immediate. I stood. All right. At the doorway, I almost turned back to tell her I loved her. Even that could have become a request for reassurance. I left without adding anything. Nina was waiting in the hall. She read my face, but did not ask what Maisie had said. "She told me to leave," I said. "And you did." It did not feel like success. Still, it was the first answer I had obeyed without trying to change its meaning. 2 days passed before Nina called. Maisie had kept our conversations practical and brief, and I had not asked her to shorten the distance between us. Then she requested a meeting with Ray. She wanted Nina present, and she wanted me in the room too, but farther away. Ray arrived in his gray work shirt with his hands empty. He stopped near the doorway until Nina asked Maisie where she wanted him. The tablet offered beside, near, far, and leave. Maisie selected near. Ray pulled a chair toward the wall, close enough for her to see him, but not close enough to reach her. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I thought staying silent would keep people from turning you into a story that made me look brave." Maisie watched him without expression. "I did not ask whether my silence was helping you." Then, when things became difficult, I decided leaving would protect you. I did not ask about that either. He glanced at his hands before continuing. I can tell you what I did that night if you ever want me to. I will not tell you what you felt or what you remember. I will not tell anyone else without your permission. He did not explain the rhythm. He did not reveal what happened inside the vehicle. He let the apology end without proving he had been right. Nina asked Maisie whether she wanted Ray to remain in the room. Her answer was yes. Then she moved to another page and chose the word near again. Ray nodded. Near, not beside. The distinction seemed small, but I felt its weight. Maisie was not restoring the old arrangement. She was designing a new one. Nina asked whether there was anything else she wanted to discuss. Maisie selected walking. My breath caught, but I kept my face still. Do you want to talk about the showcase goal? Nina asked. Maisie shows yes? Elena joined us with the event plan, but she did not open it until Maisie agreed. One by one, Nina presented the choices. Each answer became a condition rather than a promise. Maisie chose the distance herself. It was shorter than the path Beth had originally marked, and ended several feet before the center of the presentation area. Only Elena and the second physical therapist could touch her or the equipment. No one would count aloud. Ray would stand near the aisle, not on the presentation floor. No one would ask Maisie to speak. She could stop before standing, during the attempt, or after any movement. Her withdrawal signal would be honored immediately. The program would not mention her new words, the accident memory, or Ray's former job. Nina asked whether success required taking a step. Maisie answered no. Does success require standing? Nina asked. Again, she selected no. I stared at the event map. For weeks, I had imagined the room erupting when Maisie moved toward me. Now I had to accept that the most honest version of the day might end with her never leaving her chair. Nina looked at me. Laura, can you agree to that? I answered too quickly. Yes. She waited. I understood why. I agree that she can choose 0 steps. I will not ask her for one more. Maisie's shoulders lowered. When Nina asked where she wanted me, Maisie selected the point she had chosen at the end of the short path. Then she built a sentence. Walk to you. A second sentence took longer. Stop when I say. I will, I said. The words were easy. Keeping them would be the test. Beth brought 2 simple outfits for the event, because the harness worked best over smooth clothing. I held up a blue dress Maisie used to love. She looked at it, then selected no, with such speed that Ray coughed into his hand to hide a laugh. You liked this color, I said, then caught myself. You liked it 3 years ago. Maisie chose a pair of soft black pants and a bright yellow shirt instead. Ray looked down at his worn work shoes. Good choice. The dress would have made my shoes look even worse. Maisie searched her social page. They already bad. Ray pressed one hand to his chest. That was unnecessary. The breathy sound that came from Maisie was close to a laugh. This time I did not feel excluded from the joke. I was simply grateful I had waited long enough to hear it arrive. By the final rehearsal, Maisie had practiced supported weight shifts and single assisted foot placements in private, but she had never linked them into a path toward another person. I stood at the chosen endpoint while Elena checked the harness. Maisie chose not to stand that day, and no one tried to persuade her. Instead, Nina asked me to practice the only question I was allowed to use if Maisie became overwhelmed. Stay or leave, I said. Again, Nina told me. I repeated it without adding, are you sure? Or, do you want to try first? At the end of the session, Maisie called me closer with her eye gaze. She guided my hand toward the padded armrest and placed my index finger where she had tapped the rhythm before. Then she began building a message. I waded through every correction. Don't answer for me. My eyes burned, but I kept silent. She continued. Even if I'm slow. I left my finger beneath hers and answered only when she had finished. I won't. By the time we reached the community center, nearly 400 people had filled the main hall. Their voices rolled through the building in waves. Families gathered beside therapists, volunteers, former road workers, and people who had survived accidents of their own. Staff members stood near signs reminding guests that recording was restricted during the children's presentations. Maisie sat beside me in the quiet room behind the stage, wearing the yellow shirt she had chosen. Elena checked the supports around her legs, while another physical therapist inspected the walking system and harness. I kept my hands away from the straps. "Stay or leave?" I asked. Maisie selected stay. Ray waited near the aisle outside, exactly where she had placed him. He wore his gray work shirt rather than anything chosen for the event. His shoes still squeaked when he shifted his weight. Maisie noticed. Her tablet said, "Bad shoes." Ray looked down at them. "They're nervous." A breathy laugh escaped her. The sound loosened something in my chest. It reminded me that this was still her day, not the room's. Beth entered with the final program. My caregiving remarks came first. The remembrance segment followed. Maisie's optional mobility goal appeared only as a short demonstration chosen by the participant. Nothing mentioned her speech, her new signal, Ray's former job, or the accident memory. "You can stop this at any time," Beth told Maisie. She confirmed. When my name was announced, I walked onto the presentation floor alone. I spoke about the years after the accident without claiming I remembered every part of that night. "I used to think progress was something I had to recognize quickly," I told them. "Lately, I have begun to understand how often I was moving faster than my daughter. It was not a finished lesson. I was about to learn whether I could live by it." Then Elena rolled Maisie into view. The applause began immediately. Maisie's shoulders tightened. Elena waited beside her chair until the noise settled. No one touched Maisie until she selected yes. The therapists positioned the support system. The harness carried much of her weight, while braces stabilized her legs. This was not a miracle hidden beneath a yellow shirt. It was equipment, preparation, and a child making a difficult choice with a body that did not always obey quickly. I walked to the point she had selected during rehearsal. It was several feet away from her, well before the center of the floor. The distance looked small in the large hall. To me, it looked endless. Elena asked whether Maisie wanted to stand. She agreed. The support system lifted gradually. Her shoes settled against the floor, and her knees straightened within the braces. The audience went silent. My instinct was to encourage her. I wanted to tell her she was doing beautifully, that she only had to come a little farther. Instead, I stood still. Maisie shifted her weight. Nothing else happened for several seconds. Someone near the back coughed. A child whispered and was quickly hushed. Maisie's right leg tightened. With Elena guiding the equipment rather than her body, Maisie drew her left foot forward. The movement was short and uneven, but it carried her toward me. A sound moved through the audience, half gasp and half sob. I did not count. She shifted again. Her right foot moved across the floor. One of the therapists adjusted the frame as Maisie's body tilted. Elena asked whether she wanted to stop. Maisie chose to continue. She moved forward again. The harness supported her weight. The braces stabilized her knees, and two therapists guarded each movement. None of that made the direction less hers. She had chosen the destination and initiated each attempt. She was coming toward me. When she reached the place she had marked during rehearsal, she stopped. The space between us was still wide enough that I could not touch her without stepping forward. I stayed where I was. Elena asked whether she wanted another step. Maisie declined. The answer appeared on the display where the therapist could see it. No one tried to change her mind. I lowered myself until my face was level with hers. "You stopped where you chose," I said. Her eyes held mine. Then the hall erupted. People rose from their chairs. The applause struck the walls and returned louder. I saw strangers wiping their faces. Beth stood near the aisle with both hands pressed over her mouth. For one dangerous moment, I wanted to turn Maisie toward them, and let the room claim the victory. Instead, I waited until she selected yes before placing my hand on the side of her chair. The therapist lowered her safely. Ray stood near the exit, one hand resting on the rail. He had not joined the applause. His eyes remained on Maisie. Then someone called his name. "Ray, could you keep that aisle clear?" A staff member was guiding guests back toward their seats for the remembrance segment. Across the hall, Owen Brooks turned sharply. His gaze moved from the staff member to Ray. He stared for several seconds, then stepped away from the reserved road crew seats. "Ray Cole?" Ray's hand left the rail. Owen moved closer. "It is you." Beth tried to continue the program, but Owen was already scheduled to give a brief remembrance. A volunteer carried the portable microphone toward him. Ray shook his head once. Owen did not see the warning, or did not understand it. He accepted the microphone. "I haven't seen this man in 3 years." The room quieted again. Ray took one step toward the exit. Owen looked at the old scar visible below Ray's sleeve. "He worked on my highway maintenance crew the night of the Mercer crash." My stomach dropped. Beth approached Owen and said, "Owen, stop. That was not part of the approved program." He lifted one hand and continued, before the sound technician could cut the microphone. "People thank the paramedics and the firefighters," he said. "They should have. But before the rescue crews could reach one side of that vehicle, Ray crawled into the damaged section himself." Every face in the room turned toward him. Ray looked at Maisie. Owen followed his gaze. His expression changed. "That was you," he said. "You were the little girl." Maisie's breathing became shallow. I moved between her and the audience. Owen's voice trembled with emotion. "Ray stayed in there with the child for nearly 20 minutes. I reached the barrier before the rescue crew got to that side, and I heard him tapping on the metal while he watched for a response." A murmur spread through the hall. The rhythm, dark, hand, stayed. Maisie had not spoken because Ray possessed some hidden medical knowledge. Her body had answered a signal it already knew. She had recognized him before any of us understood what she was saying. Owen looked at Ray as if he expected relief. "You never told anyone where you went after that." The sound technician cut the microphone. Ray's reply carried only to those nearest him. "This was not yours to tell." Beth took the microphone from Owen and told the audience not to question Maisie. One woman near the front still called, "Does she remember him?" A volunteer, moving on habit before Beth could redirect her, brought the portable microphone toward me. Ray moved toward the exit, but the attention followed him. Maisie's hands tightened against the armrests. Her eyes moved rapidly between the screen, the crowd, and Ray. She could not hold her gaze on a word long enough to select it. Someone still expected an answer. I looked at my daughter. I could have asked the question that would have completed everything. Was Ray the one who stayed? The entire room seemed to wait for me to take the truth from her. I lowered the microphone. Then I stepped closer, blocking as much of the audience's view as I could. "Stay or leave?" I asked. Maisie searched the 2 choices we had practiced. The hall remained silent. Her eyes settled on one. "Leave," the device said. I handed the microphone to Beth. Elena released the presentation equipment, while the second therapist secured Maisie in her wheelchair. No one asked her for another word. I did not explain our departure. I did not thank the audience or turn the moment into a lesson. We left 400 people waiting for an ending. In the quiet corridor outside, Maisie's breathing slowly steadied. Ray came through the door several moments later but stopped at a distance. "There is one thing I can tell you," he said. "It belongs to what I did, not to what she remembers." Every part of me wanted to say yes. Maisie watched me. I looked at Ray and answered, "Not until she says you can." For 1 week after the showcase, Maisie did not speak aloud again. She still used her tablet. She chose breakfast, corrected Elena during therapy, and rejected every shirt I held up that had buttons near the neck. But the breathy words that had begun with, "He's different," did not return. The old version of me would have called that a setback. Dr. Patel did not. She walked away from an overwhelming room after using every method available to protect herself, Nina told me. She did not fail because she did not give the audience another sentence. We were back in the small consultation room at the rehabilitation center. Maisie sat beside me, her yellow shirt folded over the back of her chair because she had refused to wear it again. Ray waited near the wall, not beside her. The distance had become familiar rather than cold. Nina reviewed the plan for the coming weeks. Maisie would continue her communication work and practice supported standing and stepping, without treating the showcase as something she had to repeat. Her wheelchair remained the safest and most independent way for her to move through most of her day. Beth sent a written apology to every family whose participation had been disrupted and reminded the staff that private histories were not public rewards. Owen asked to apologize in person. Maisie agreed only after Nina offered her the choice of having him in the room, hearing a written message, or refusing contact completely. She chose the room and placed him farther away than Ray. Owen entered without the confidence he had carried at the showcase. He held his cap in both hands and looked first at Maisie. "I thought people should know what Ray did," he said. "He left the department without taking credit. I believed recognition would help him." Maisie watched him without selecting anything. Owen swallowed. "I did not understand that the truth also belonged to you. I spoke because I wanted to honor him. I did not ask whether speaking would hurt you." His eyes moved toward Ray. "I am sorry to both of you." Ray did not rescue him from the silence. After nearly a minute, Maisie selected, "Heard." It was not forgiveness. It was not rejection. Owen nodded as if she had given him exactly what he deserved. When he left, Ray remained near the wall. He looked tired in a way I had not noticed before. People at the center now knew he had been at the crash, but he had refused interviews and asked Beth not to include his name in any future program. He was still the man who emptied bins before morning therapy and complained when visitors left paper cups on the windowsills. The revelation had not turned him into someone else. Ray looked at Maisie. "There is something I can tell you. Only what I did. Nothing about what you felt or what you remember." Nina placed the yes and no choices on the screen. "Do you want Ray to tell us?" she asked. Maisie agreed. Then she built another sentence. No question." The words tightened around my chest. "I agree," I said. Ray pulled the chair closer, but he stopped when Maisie selected near. He sat where she had placed him and rested his hands on his knees. "My crew was working east of the curve," he began. "We heard the impact. I looked at the clock in the truck before I ran, because I had to report the time to dispatch." He kept his eyes on Maisie. "One man called by radio. I went toward the vehicle. The rear section had been pushed against the barrier, and the rescue crew had not reached that side yet." His fingers flexed once. "I could get in from the right. I found a little girl awake, but she could not answer me." He did not call the girl Maisie. He did not say she was terrified. "I told her before I touched her hand. I said I was going to stay where she could see me." A pressure built behind my ribs. I wanted to ask whether she had called for me. I wanted to know if her eyes had searched the darkness for her mother. I held the question inside. Ray continued. "There was a lot of noise outside. On road crews, when machinery swallowed our voices, I sometimes used a simple tapping pattern to see whether someone could respond. It was not a secret code. That night, I told her, 'One sound at a time.'" Maisie's gaze dropped to his fingers. Ray tapped his knee twice. He waited. Then he tapped once, longer. Her hand moved a little. I could not tell whether it was intentional, so I waited and tried again. She moved after the same pattern. Dark, hand, stayed. The words no longer felt like pieces I had to assemble. They belonged to the person who had chosen them. "I kept using the rhythm," Ray said. "Not to make her do anything. I wanted her to know I was still there." His voice roughened. "Emergency crews reached us about 18 minutes after I checked the clock. I moved when they told me to move." That was all. He did not say he saved her. He did not describe her face or give us words she had never chosen. He left the inside of those 18 minutes closed. Nina asked Maisie whether she wanted the conversation to continue. Maisie ended it. Ray stood. Before he left, she chose one more word. Stay. He sat back down. No one spoke for several minutes. I had imagined that hearing the truth would answer the question that had tormented me. Had Maisie thought I abandoned her? Instead, the truth gave me a different image. A man I had not known had warned her before touching her, offered a rhythm instead of a command, and remained until trained hands could reach her. It did not erase my absence. It also did not erase everything that came after. At home, the 2 notebooks remained on the kitchen shelf. I no longer carried them into every room. The blue one held Ray's account. The gray one still held only what Maisie had permitted me to record. When people asked about the accident, I stopped saying I had never left her side. I said, there is a part I don't remember. Some people looked uncomfortable. I let them. A few days later, Maisie and I sat in the library courtyard during my lunch break. Her schoolwork was open on the tablet, but she had spent 10 minutes watching a sparrow steal crumbs beneath a bench. I asked whether she wanted to go inside or stay outdoors. Her eyes moved across the choices, then stopped. I almost said, stay outside? The guess rose to my lips. I did not speak. Maisie lifted her hand toward the padded armrest and guided my finger into place. Then she tapped against it. 2 light taps. A pause. 1 longer press. My throat tightened, but I did not tell her what the rhythm meant. She opened the communication page. The first sentence took nearly a minute. He stayed then. I know, I said. Maisie looked toward the sparrow. I thought she had finished. Another long pause followed. Her lips parted, but the sound would not form. She returned to the screen and built the words one at a time. You stayed after. The sentence did not forgive every mistake I had made. It did not return the missing hours or promise that she would ever tell me more. It gave each kind of staying its own truth. Ray had remained for 18 minutes when I could not. I had remained through the 3 years that followed. Neither truth needed to erase the other. Maisie returned to my earlier question. I expected her to choose the courtyard. Instead, she selected the library, then added that she wanted the elevator rather than the ramp, because the sparrow had already taken the last crumb. I laughed and moved behind her chair only after she selected yes. The answer had taken longer than I expected, and it was not the answer I would have chosen for her. I did not fill the pause. I let it belong to her.